Because you're basically insinuating that refs are getting paid. People think that the game is not fixed. If we could if we ever get to the point, any sport, if they found out, it would ruin the sport. It would ruin the sport.
Jordee, have you ever heard of the conspiracy that the Chicago Bears, the NFL team, are cursed by their owner, Virginia McCaskey?
No.
I hadn't either. I started doing some research because I wanted to find some conspiracies that maybe aren't as mainstream or other people had heard of it. And I feel like the Chicago media, I feel like this lady, one, has some powerful friends. And two, the Chicago media has really just swept this under the rug because they've not reported on it in a long time. But it's just very interesting. So anyway, greetings. I'm Sky, also known as the Sports Guy. I'm one of your hosts. I'm joined by my other host today. This is Jordee. He's a fellow fanatic. Jordee, what are you thinking so far with that title?
I'm thinking not a conspiracy I expected to even hear. So I'm all in.
Yeah, it's really different. This is going to be one of those ones where I think most people, 99, even hardcore sports fans, unless you are a Chicago native that was around in the 80s or 70s, you probably have never even touched on this. So I think you're really going to be I think you're really going to enjoy it otherwise.
So this was an old conspiracy back in the day.
Yeah, and it's still going on right now. So, and the conspiracy is that she has cursed the team. And before we jump into that, I just wanted to say thank you. We really value everyone who is watching or listening to our podcast. The plan is to do new episodes every single Monday. You can catch us on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram. If you prefer listening, we're going to be on Spotify, Apple, everywhere where podcasts are played. You should be able to find us. Additionally, if you want to be a part of the show, drop us a comment. Let me know what sports conspiracy you want me and Jordee to research and talk about next. And at a minimum, at least go leave us a 5-star review. That's what's going to help us not rely on our friends and family to grow this podcast. So we want to grow it organically. We don't want too much outside help. Not that that's a bad thing, but we need listeners like you to help us grow this. So it costs you nothing just to drop those 5 stars. Tell us you love us or you hate us. I really don't care either way, but let us know what you're thinking and what else you want us to cover. So yeah, let's jump into the episode here, Jordee. So today we're going to do 2 intriguing narratives that are connected to Virginia McCaskey. And if you're not familiar with her, she is the 102-year-old owner of the Chicago Bears. 102 years old, still kicking. So
impressive.
Yeah, I mean, she's going. There's a third conspiracy that she's immortal, but I didn't feel like doing any research and stuff like that on that. I just thought that's too far of a stretch. That's not the kind of show this is. So we're going to try to stay away from the too obscure conspiracies that are out there. So
I mean, she's been around for a long time. It could be like the Wilt thing where they didn't keep the stats correct,
No, this lady's for sure 102, for sure.
That's just crazy to hear. I know it happens very few in between, but that's awesome.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, good for her, So here it is. It's kind of a 2-parter. First, the conspiracy that is suggesting that so the first part of this is the conspiracy part. So the conspiracy is that she killed her brother. That way she could own the team. That's the conspiracy. And then the curse part of this is the Chicago Bears are not going to win a Super Bowl until 2 things happen. Either the McCaskeys aren't in the ownership anymore, or the Chicago Bears, they bring back what they called the Honey Bears, which is their form of cheerleaders. So they won't win a Super Bowl. They're cursed unless they bring the cheerleaders back, and that she conspired to kill her brother. That's how she owns the team. So those are the two things we're gonna cover. What's your initial reaction to all that?
Yeah. It's wild, but they have been bad for a really long time.
Right. Now, let me ask you, I know you have a sister. Would you kill her to win a Super Bowl or to own a professional sports team?
I mean, no, but
Good for you.
if I were to say yes, it probably wouldn't be here, but still no.
Perfect.
I don't think anybody would do that. That's crazy.
Right. No one would do that ever. So yeah, we what we want to do here, as always, there's three parts to this. First, I'm going to set the stage. I'm going to give you the timeline so you can kind of understand how things unfolded, and kind of like the unsettling actions that are attributed to by this seemingly sweet elderly woman. You know, and if you look up a picture of this lady online, you are going to get an image of what just looks like anybody's mama. But I assure you, by the end of this episode, you are going to be thankful she's not yours, or at least not your aunt. You know, I'll say that much. You know, with her killing her brother. Next,
before you go on, I just want to address. I appreciate that you say "mama."
Yeah,
because that's the only way. You know.
Oh, there is no grandmas.
Yeah.
There is no grandmothers.
Nuh-uh.
There's mamas and papas. That's it.
Right.
That's it.
That's right.
So after I set the stage and we kind of go through what we know is fact, you know, kind of, I'm going to set the stage there, and then I'm going to present you some evidence and facts that we know are true that I think supports the fact that she killed her, you know, the conspiracy, not the fact that she killed her brother. And then finally, we're just going to share our own, you know, personal thoughts and reactions. I've also got 2 videos I'm going to play here throughout the episode to kind of help us just kind of visualize, you know, what we're dealing with here. So here's the background. Like I said, it's a 2-part story. We're going to go in the Wayback Machine all the way to 1976, 14 years before I was even procreated on this earth. The owner at the time, Chicago Bears, it's George Halas, I think is how you say it, Halas. And essentially, he creates what he calls the Honey Bears. This is his group of cheerleaders. The Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders were very popular in the 70s. So this is his attempt to kind of jazz up the team and, you know, pump some new life into it and make entertainment just as much as a part of the game, right? Nowadays, we have halftime shows, and especially the Super Bowl halftime show, and that, you know, all that goes into the game. You know, I know from taking my kids to sporting events, sometimes what they're doing in between the quarters, or like a baseball game in between the innings, is what's, you know, really what in there for, like, you know, not the diehard football fan, right? So anyway,
I mean, I think it just doing that stuff. If you're somebody sitting at home, it's like whatever.
Right.
When you're somebody in attendance, you're obviously more interested anyways, but that kind of, for families and stuff, it's good.
Sure. Yeah.
It really captures the moment.
Right. Yeah. And it adds something, and it also gives you something to keep you entertained during TV breaks and timeouts and everything else. Right. So
yeah.
Me personally, I'm pro cheerleader. I'm pro, you know, people working and, you know, doing what they want to do and entertaining, you know, as long as it's appropriate. So anyway, so he creates the Honey Bears. He's trying to kind of jazz up the team here in 1976. George has got 2 children. His oldest is Virginia. Okay. That's who we're going to talk about a lot today. And he's got his son, which is George Jr., but they call him Muggs. That's his nickname, is Muggs. So for this episode, we're going to refer to his son as Muggs, okay? Just so we're not saying George a bunch, right? So essentially, Virginia's the older one, and George, even though he's the younger one, you know, Muggs, you know, he's the younger one. His dad, just like all dads, they want their sons to follow in their footsteps, not necessarily their daughters, right? I apologize if you're listening and don't agree with that, but I find that to be more times true than others, especially this is the 1970s, right? You know, so I could see how a dad would want to pass that torch to his son one day, even though his daughter's older, you know. Fast forward to 1979. Muggs suffers a heart attack, in quotations, on the last day of the season, and he's only 54 years old. So he's not a spring chicken, but he's not like a crazy old dude. And he's not like got any major health conditions leading up to this moment either. So it was a very sudden surprise thing that he has this heart attack. Prior to his heart attack, prior to him passing away, he had been married to, I think it's Teresa is the name here. It's got kind of a different spelling, so I apologize if she's listening and I didn't say it right. But they ended up actually getting divorced in 1975. So 4 years prior, he gets divorced and then has the heart attack. He has 2 children himself, Stephen and Christine. Okay, so these are Virginia's niece and nephew. Okay, you follow me so far?
Yep.
Okay. Now listen to this. George Sr., okay, George Halas, he passes away in 1983. Okay. Because the son was already deceased and he had already become divorced, Virginia had positioned herself as the executor of Muggs's estate. So she's making decisions for Stephen and Christine. The plan originally was for Muggs's ownership percentages to get transferred to them. Okay. Now, 1983 happens. He passes. Team is left to Virginia. 1985, Chicago Bears. We know what happens. One of the greatest defenses of all time. They win the Super Bowl, right? One of the greatest teams of all time. They're regarded very highly. I think you could put them as maybe a top 10 or 15 team all time ever. And probably on any given Sunday, they might have a chance to beat anybody. I mean, they were that good. Coincidentally, 1985 is the last year that they do the Honey Bears. Remember me mentioning the cheerleaders to you?
Yep.
So she takes over the team, and within 2 years, they win the Super Bowl, and the cheerleaders go away. So many believe, kind of going back to Muggs here, that he didn't die from a heart attack. Okay. Instead, some allege that his sister was responsible for his death. That's what we're talking about. The second part of this tale is with the Honey Bears. They're gone. And just bottom line, what a lot of Bears fans are saying that do know about this is that they aren't going to win another championship, and they're not going to do anything until either the McCaskey family sells the team or the cheerleaders make a comeback. So that's our background. Have you heard anything that stands out to you?
It just seems like weird timing.
Yeah. It's very convenient, right?
It is. It sounds so far-fetched, though. I mean,
right. Now, far-fetched being the cursed part or the killing your brother part?
Just, I feel like we haven't really got to the cursed part yet, but everything so far just seems like, yeah, but this is, years. She would have had years ahead of planning, it seems like.
Maybe she did. I mean, she's grown up her whole life knowing that her dad wants to give the team to the son, so who knows? Maybe. Yeah. And really the curse thing is a lot of fans are just saying that until the cheerleaders come back, they're not going to win a Super Bowl. That's all that really is on the Honey Bear part. I just thought it was kind of a fun thing and a coincidence to put in there. And it's one of those things that was one of her things that she did away with as owner of the team. So here is the evidence against Virginia. Okay. And just to preface before we get too deep into this, me and Jordee, we are not legal counsel. We are not accusing Virginia of anything. I'm sure these people are wealthy and powerful. We're not trying to have any cease and desist orders. This is for entertainment purposes only. We're just going off of evidence that was readily available on the internet. And the theories that we'll share later are simply that, just theories. A little disclaimer there. So the evidence that raises suspicion of foul play concerning Muggs is the divorce. Virginia becomes the executor, like I mentioned. And she alters the ownership structure right away, even though those percentages that Muggs is promised are supposed to go to his children. Okay. So at the time of his death, the kids were set to inherit 28% of the team. And then Virginia would only get 21%. Okay. If the kids get the 28%, guess who becomes the face of the team?
One of the kids.
The ex-wife. Muggs's ex-wife, who he divorced, would become the face of the team.
Yep.
Teresa.
Okay.
So I can see, as the sister, her brother maybe he did just pass, right? Maybe there was no foul play, going, okay, no, not on my watch. You're not taking this team from my family. Right?
Understandable.
Right? Other end of this, which is a theory I'll get into later, but maybe there's some foul play there where somebody thought maybe if Muggs passed, then that person could be the face of the team either way. So just kind of odd there, I thought. This arrangement would have positioned Teresa as the face of the team, like I said. However, as the executor, Virginia was allowed to do a few things with the shares that were available. So when we talk about shares in a stock, Jordee, and I'm sure you're familiar with this, there's Class A, Class B, Class C, shares. Class A has decision-making power. So she wasn't really allowed to change their percentages, but she was allowed to change what class they were. So she changed them to Class C, so they wouldn't be able to make any decisions or have any voting power. They would only be able to benefit from the team. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So she changes the percentages and she changes the class of shares. So it can't be the face of the team, Teresa, sorry. And you and your children will have no say in this team. And then that gives her the largest ownership stake, and she doesn't notify anybody of the changes. She just does this, and maybe she felt like she had a right to not have to explain herself. Right. We've all been there before.
That's a lot of argument waiting to happen.
Right. How are they going to feel if I tell them I want to do this?
Especially if you have your mind made up that you're doing it anyways.
Right. What's there really to discuss? Just do it and deal with it later. Yeah.
Yeah.
So as a result of all this, there's multiple lawsuits, as you can imagine. There's tons of legal disputes. People are arguing and fighting over insurance payouts. You can imagine. I mean, these people own the Chicago Bears. They got some money, right? So they're fighting over insurance payouts. They're fighting over ownership stakes. It's just a mess. So we got to fast forward now to 1987. Muggs, his remains are exhumed for a second autopsy at the request of Teresa and her children. Okay. So here it is, 1987. He's been dead now. How long? What was it? 1979. So he's been in the ground 8 years. We want a second autopsy. It's just not sitting right with us. Let's get the body out of the ground. So one thing that was interesting, so they had a forensic pathologist conduct the autopsy, and they discovered that Muggs, several of his internal organs, including the heart, lungs, spinal cord, had been replaced with sawdust. Teresa's attorney, William J. Hart, claimed that Muggs's death was not natural and warranting furher insurance payouts. He's saying this wasn't a death. It wasn't like an accidental death or a natural death. Or it wasn't a natural death. Maybe it was an accidental, or there's foul play, and their policies that pays out more. So, kind of going to bat after this evidence comes forward and saying, "Hey, we need more money here." There was a doctor and a former medical examiner of New York City who performed the autopsy. And he stated in a deposition that the brain, heart, lungs, kidney, spleen, gallbladder, testes, and spinal cord were they were removed and replaced with sawdust. So that's actually the name of the person who did it there. The quote from him is really interesting here. So I put the quote here. Such complete removal and disposal of organs is highly unusual and raises concerns. Dr. Baden remarked in his deposition, the absence of internal organs significantly limits our ability to detect drugs or poisons that may have been present at the time of death. So he's saying, I'm not saying he's poisoned, but there's no way to know because the organs aren't there.
Yeah, you need it to even say yes or no. So
right, and they're not there, and they're supposed to be. Dr. Baden later indicated that he had no knowledge of the fate of the organs, noting that typically removed organs are returned to the body after examination. So even if they do remove something and do whatever with it, they usually put it back unless it's donated, right? That's like kind of the other exception. And organ donation wasn't as big in the 70s as it is now. To investigate what happened to the missing organs, the lawyer, William Hart, representing Muggs's children, planned to request Judge Arthur Dunn of Cook County Circuit Court to order depositions from 15 physicians, paramedics, police officers that were all involved in the original 1979 autopsy. However, an Illinois appellate court denied Teresa's petition in 1988. So they wanted to get interviews and all kinds of stuff from everybody who was involved 8 years ago, and the court said no. That sounds like somebody with some money saying, shh, we ain't bringing this back up. That's what it sounds like.
Unless they just felt like there was no case to really make here. It's been so long. Stuff isn't, again, it's not documented very well. Stuff's not as intensively researched as it is today.
Right. And one thing I did in my research, I learned that, if a judge is going to go back and review something from another judge and overturn it, that's kind of like a big deal. Like you normally don't do something, like you would have to go back and tell that judge they were wrong, essentially. And that's something that no judge typically wants to do.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how it is for every, case that they are on or whatever. But a lot of times it's almost nearly impossible to reopen a case.
Yeah. And I think that was a big part of this.
Yeah.
So kind of interesting thing, going back to the Honey Bears, kind of get back to something a little lighter here. So once the cheerleaders were put in place, essentially it was instant success. So before the cheerleaders, the team's record is this, Jordee: 35 wins, 76 losses, 1 tie over 8 seasons. They played 14 game seasons back then, so 112 games. So an abysmal losing record. They win like 30% of the time. Pretty bad.
Before cheerleaders.
Yeah, before the cheerleaders.
Okay.
Listen to this. After they get the cheerleaders, first season, they go 500. Second season, they make the playoffs. And then from 1976 to 1985, the record is 82-67, 4 playoff appearances, and they win the Super Bowl. So they went from pretty abysmal to very, very competitive.
It doesn't happen often, but it has happened. It has happened before, but not very often. Right.
And then, sure enough, 1985 is the last year for the Honey Bears. And since then, since they got rid of the Honey Bears, they are 238 wins with 273 losses, 9 playoff appearances, and no championships. One thing that gives this curse that some of the Bears fans believe a little bit of gas, so to speak. Do you remember the last time they went to a Super Bowl?
No.
So it's 2010. They played the Colts. They played your Indianapolis Colts.
Okay. That was before but that's before I was really into sports,
Okay. So coincidentally,
you gotta remember how young I am. Not that I'm super young, but I didn't get into sports heavily until I was 13, 14, years old. So.
Okay. Gotcha. So What's interesting about that little fact, now they end up losing that Super Bowl to the Colts. That year, it was reported that fans showed up at training camp dressed as unofficial honey bears, and they were petitioning to bring the cheerleaders back, and they were having people sign this petition. And coincidentally, they do that, and they make it to a Super Bowl, just showing up at training camp.
Wow.
And it hasn't happened since. So, Bears fans, if you guys want to give yourselves a little boost, go to training camp as a honey bear. I just thought that was really kind of interesting.
Before we skip past that, you kind of just rubbed it in my face a little bit that I didn't become a football fan and get to witness the Colts' great years, because since I've been a Colts fan, it hasn't been super pleasant. I miss the Peyton Manning era.
It's tough, and they had Andrew Luck. I mean, they had a chance at it, and they just didn't do enough.
Yeah.
They didn't do enough with them. Not to
get sidetracked, but
Yeah.
Speaking of statistically bad, since I've been a fan, I've just been waiting for that. So.
Yeah, I'm a Browns fan, so that should tell everybody that's listening just how miserable I am. So kind of one last point about the honey bear thing. So Virginia McCaskey, that's her full name, she's made it clear the Bears will not have cheerleaders while she owns the team. Her children, Michael and George McCaskey, along with their grandchildren, have also expressed intentions to maintain an anti-cheerleading stance when they inherit the team. So that's part of this curse, is they've made it a point to not just not have them, but publicly talk about how they're not going to bring it back. It's just not going to happen. And there's a lot of fans that just believe they're not going to win the big one again until that happens. So, that's kind of it for the evidence. I have two different theories I was working on about this whole thing. But I'm curious, like, when it comes to Virginia killing her brother, because they're not really a smoking gun, right? What do you think? What's your reaction? Is it plausible? Could it have happened?
I think when you dig deep into it, you can really start believing it. I think there's a chance that, it is a long stretch of years, so coincidentally all of this could have happened. That just things happen with time.
Right. I mean, somebody gets divorced. It's not if I got divorced, it's not a stretch to think that I would maybe put my sister on my will as an executor to help me with my kids.
Right. Exactly.
Me, right. Especially if it was a bad divorce or a messy divorce.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the part where I'm like, okay, maybe they had a bad marriage. He wanted to make sure it didn't go to her. Maybe they had these conversations. But part of me is like, listen to what you're saying. I mean, it's not very far-fetched. It does make sense.
Right. And then where's the organs? Why are the organs gone?
And we all know the world we live in. There's plenty of evil people for money.
Right.
Money is the root of all.
I mean, you're growing up, your little brother's going to get the team.
Yeah.
The golden child's going to get the team.
Yeah. Yep.
That's not going to potentially put you in a mindset where you feel like chopped liver, where you want that admission from your family that you can do, a good job, that you can run the team. So
part of me is curious, is there anything that the kids have came up and said, interviewed, talked about? That's kind of something I'm interested in.
So about 10 years ago, the Bears weren't doing very good. And there's an interview with George, and I've got the interview here. I'm going to play it. And it just really rubbed me the wrong way, the way he describes his mom. Right? Keep in mind, this woman at the time is in her 90s. Right? I wouldn't describe my mom this way, going back to the mom thing. But so here's the clip. You ready?
Yep.
She's been very supportive. She agrees with the decisions that we've made. She's pissed off. I can't think of a 91-year-old woman that description would apply to, but in this case, I can't think of a more accurate description. She's been on this earth for 8 of the Bears' 9 championships, and she wants more. She feels that it's been too long since the last one, and that dissatisfaction is shared by her children, her grandchildren, and her great-grandchildren. She's fed up with mediocrity. She feels that she and Bears fans everywhere deserve better.
I just think it's just so odd how he's talking about her. She feels this and she feels that. It's like, dude, you're the unofficial chairman. Just be like, you don't
have to speak for her.
Yeah, my goal here is to win and bring a championship to Chicago. That's all he had to say.
Yeah.
But there's some deep level there where I can imagine her younger wanting to impress her dad. You know how sometimes we project our own things onto our kids?
Yeah, absolutely.
So there you go. Maybe that's been projected onto George now, the son, and he feels like he has to prove something to his mom because she just doesn't sound like a pleasant person. I mean,
yeah.
You're probably a billionaire if you own a sports franchise, or at least very, very wealthy. It's just one of those things. So here's another little clip that I wanted to play. I thought it was worth sharing.
She's been very...
I'm sorry, here it comes. My mouse got stuck. If you're curious what the Honey Bears look like, okay, because we know what a Dallas Cowboy cheerleader looks like. I just thought this was a pretty cool clip from the 70s, so I wanted to play it. It's only a few seconds.
Bring the place kicker out and try an onside kick in that situation. Bears have it back once again, midfield. I've never seen it show. They'll be with us tomorrow night as our World Series coverage continues from St. Louis. The Honey Bears.
That's pretty conservative for the 70s.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I seen a quote from Virginia talking about how it's disrespectful towards women and, whatever. And I get it. Sometimes the way certain TVs and movies can depict a cheerleader, but they seem pretty conservative compared to what I was imagining.
Yeah.
Especially for the 70s. I mean, that was a wild time.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't think when she says inappropriate for a kid, something I wouldn't be like, I don't want my kid to see. I don't want this to be on TV.
The women were literally wearing long sleeves.
Yeah, they were, covered for, to make it inappropriate. Everything was covered. So
right.
I'm not sure.
Right.
Weird.
Yeah. In my mind, I imagine, a big chest, maybe like a bathing suit or something. I mean, a lot of cleavage, that kind of thing. And it's actually fairly conservative for that era. So.
A lot of clothing missing, more missing than what's on
right. Yeah, I was like, that's pretty mild.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like when I Googled it and I was like looking it up, I'm like, what's all the hype about? And it's like just that. So I just thought that was funny. So I got 2 theories. Okay. The first theory is that Virginia did it, poisons her brother, takes over as executor, changes the shares, runs the team, jealous older sister is the theory. Second theory, and I haven't seen any of this anywhere else. So this is a Sky the Sports Guy special.
Straight hot take off the
hot. This is a red hot take for entertainment purposes only.
Okay.
And follow me here.
Don't ruin it.
Maybe Teresa did it. Okay, so she kills her husband, knowing that the kids are going to inherit stuff. She's the adult. So she's going to get the percentage. She's going to be the face of the team. It backfires on her, okay, where Virginia steps in, does her thing. 8 years later, she's like, let's dig up Muggs' body, and I'll prove that Virginia has something to do with it, knowing darn well she's the one who poisoned him, knowing darn well the organs aren't there, and knowing darn well that's going to be like a red flag, thinking, okay, that'll prove it. Everybody be on Virginia. Me and the kids will get our shares back. We'll be back in control. I know it's a theory, but imagine kind of foul play gone wrong where it's like it set off a chain reaction that she didn't realize where she wasn't going to get what she wanted.
I don't think that's far-fetched, though.
Huh?
I don't. We hear so many crazy things like that happening, and, you know, obviously they were truly, fully committed at one point of loving each other, and maybe they had a nasty divorce.
Right.
She hated him, or, you know, people hold grudges, and when it's something that serious, you'll do things out of character.
Right.
And if there's that much money on the line and you think for yourself or your kids there's a future there.
Right. And like what you said, maybe they didn't have a good marriage.
Yeah.
You know, maybe he was mean to her. Maybe he was entitled because of the way he was raised. Maybe he was abusive. Maybe whatever. Or maybe she was just a gold digger. Who knows, right? But
right.
Once again, entertainment purposes only. Teresa and Virginia, please don't come for me. You know, Bears fans, please don't come for me. I'm on your side as a Browns fan. I'd love to see you guys win, as long as it's not against my Brownies. So, you know, Chris, any closing thoughts there for you?
No, I think this was a interesting conspiracy. I can't say whether I fully believe one way or the other.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too. It's
but it's one of those ones that's like fun to think about, you know, if you're digging into a conspiracy, because those are the ones where it fully is more a conspiracy than trying to fact check this or that. It's like, well, nobody knows, but all of this makes sense.
And I just think the honey bear thing is so fun. It's like you know, I'm not even a Bears fan, but now I'm like a fan of the honey bears, and I'm like, bring them back. Let's get them back in there. You know, let's see if it makes a difference again.
If that's the question, I mean, let's just hire him for a season and see.
Let's just see what happens.
Why are we not? You know, as a Bears fan, I would be rooting for it too. Like, you guys, it's not that big of a deal.
Well, you heard what George said. You know, mom's tired of mediocrity, and she's PO'd.
Right. Well, we are now in a very new age compared to back then. Bring the cheerleaders back. Let's just try it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Look where the Bears still are. That was 10 years ago. And you just had Caleb Williams. You just have a crazy offense. You got Ben Johnson now, and they're going to come in and make some stuff happen. And
that's awesome.
I just can't help but think until the ownership changes, it's probably not going to make a difference.
We just need to reach out to Ben Johnson and tell him it's one thing he's going to have to, you know,
lobby for.
Yeah, it's like, listen, guys, you want me to turn this franchise around. This is what I need.
If I was a baller, I promise you, I would write a check and get me some dancers in the honey bear outfits, and they would be at every single game.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there you go, Bears fans. If you guys want to win, that's all you got to do. So anyway, guys, we appreciate you listening. That's kind of the episode for today. Once again, if you enjoy this, if you liked it, if it made you think, if it made you laugh, if you think me and Chris are dumb, if you think we're smart, be sure to like it either way. Be sure to share it either way. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, watch us on YouTube, leave us a 5-star review anywhere you can, and be sure to like and subscribe. And then we'll see you guys next Monday right around 12:15.
There was a lot said by everybody, except for me, to tell you the truth. So we'll let people keep talking like they know everything, like they have all the answers. And then sooner or later, the whole truth will come out. And until then, we'll continue to let people talk.